Welcome back to Art Talk. We've had a lovely long break, but we're really happy to be back, and we're so glad that you're joining us as well. I'm your host, Laura Womack, and with me is Jen McHugh, our technical director.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back.
Black Cowboys are having a moment with Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, Pharrell Williams's American Western collection for Louis Vuitton last fall, and David Oyelowo's Lawmen Bass Reeves. This trending subject is nothing new for photographer Ron Tarver, who grew up in Oklahoma, where Black cowboys were an ordinary part of his life. Ron himself rode horses, went to rodeos, spent summer days on his cousin's ranch, or working on local farms, and his grandfather was a working cowboy in the 1940s. When Ron moved back to Philadelphia in 1983, he was surprised by how uninformed people were about Black cowboys, and the revelation spurred his dedication to photograph Black cowboy culture, including on assignments for National Geographic and the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now Ron has published The Long Ride Home, Black Cowboys in America. From ranches to city streets, Ron's photographs reveal the beauty, romance, and visual poetry of Black cowboys throughout the country. The book sold out in less than a month. Ron's resume is impressive. Just to hit some highlights, he earned a BA in journalism and graphic arts from Northeastern State University in Oklahoma, an MFA from the University of Arts in Philadelphia. He's an associate professor of art at Swarthmore College, and before joining the faculty, he was a staff photojournalist at the Philadelphia Inquirer for 32 years, where he shared the 2012 Pulitzer Prize for his work on a series documenting school violence in the Philadelphia public school system. Ron was nominated for 3 Pulitzers and honored with awards from World Press Photos, the Sigma Delta Chi Award of the Society of Professional Journalists, and so many more things. His work has appeared in National Geographic, Lifetime, Newsweek, Sports Illustrated, Ebony, Jet, Huffington Post, and Hyperallergic. It goes on, so please check out his bio on our website at phillipsmill.org and go to Art Talk, or check out his work, which is currently hanging in the Michener Museum right now. Welcome to Art Talk, Ron Tarver.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And thanks to all of you for joining us in the audience. As always, put your questions in the Q&A and we will make sure we get to them. Now let's start, as always, with a look at Ron's work. Okay, Ron, this is our title page. You want to tell us about this There we go. Tell us about this photograph.
This one. So this is Bumpsy Bullock and his son Jordan. Bumpsy owned the Western Wranglers stables in Brewerytown, where I first started photographing the Cowboys, and he sort of developed these stables out of thin air. He and his sister got an old building and built stables in them. And sad thing about Bumpsy is, I mean, the sort of bittersweet thing about Bumpsy was that during COVID, he called me and said that he would like for me to get in touch with his son Jordan, and I hadn't seen Bumpsy or Jordan in like 25 years. I mean, it'd been a long time, or talked to him. And I said, Bumpsy, I'm so glad that, you call me. And he said, sure, I'll love to get in touch with Jordan. So Jordan, I waited a couple of weeks and called Jordan. And I said, Jordan, your dad told me to get in touch with you. And he said, oh, man, my dad passed away of COVID. And it was such a tragic thing that I don't know what Bumpsy's intention was for us to get together, but Jordan and I have stayed in contact ever since. And we've done some things together. We've done some interviews together. And Jordan has grown up to be just an amazing man. He has a daughter now that's 16. Jordan's 41, I think. He trains horses at the Parks Casino in he trains racehorses, and he just had a winning horse just a few weeks ago. So he was really excited about that. I saw him at an event. So, but yeah, he's it was just such a wonderful time spending time with the two of them and all the folks in the stables and the riding club. Um, so yeah, so that's a little bit about this
Yeah.
image.
Oh, that's so bittersweet.
Yeah.
Uh, there's such a loving look between the two of them, and there's such intimacy in this photograph.
Oh yeah, Jordan just adored his dad, and he still does, to this day. And he owes everything to his father. He really taught him everything he knew about horses, but not just about horses. I mean, Jordan is super intelligent about the history of Philadelphia uh, Cowboys and how that came to be. So actually, we did an interview on Fox 29 where he talked about uh, his legacy growing up in this family, in this horse uh, family, this cowboy culture, and he told me, he said, well, when before I started photographing, he didn't realize that there were other people out there that sort of lived the lifestyle that he did until he saw some of the pictures that I made across the country. So um, he really is somebody that knows the history of Philadelphia and how the culture of black horsemanship here in town.
So they're in Oklahoma, or Jordan's in Oklahoma, and
No,
bumps that this
no,
is in
they're
Philadelphia.
this is all in Philadelphia. Yeah, this is in
It's so
Philly.
surprising. I think the next photo is Philadelphia as well. Is that right, Jen? Oh, sorry, New York City.
Yeah, this is New York. So this is Bumpsy in New York. So he so the his riding club went to New York. They would do these sort of impromptu meetups with their horses in Harlem. And this is Bumpsy in the middle of Harlem trotting down the street with a police car in the background, which I just love. But I mean, this was Bumpsy. He was just like happy to be wherever his horse was. So
So how does this horse end up being in New York City?
they took him up there, and they did actually they literally did a trot down 11th Avenue uh, in New York, and it was completely unplanned, and they stopped traffic, but it's just what they did. I remember I was in traffic with them, and this woman rolled down her window, a white woman rolled down her window, and she said, "Are these black cowboys?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I mean, take a look. But I think it was just a surprise to everybody, and I think they really sort of got a kick out of that. Just the surprise factor or the wow factor of seeing all these guys riding down the road, down the street, in on the upper east side.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. I mean, the horse looks really out of place on
Yeah,
these urban streets.
yeah,
It's a great visual.
yeah.
And then the only horses I think of in New York City are the police officers
Right.
who are mounted, which is a very different look.
hmm Actually, New York has a very robust um, group of black riders up there. They're pretty kind of well known in the New York area, just like the Fletcher Street Riding Club down here, in Philly. Um, they have a name for themselves up there. I was just up at Fletcher Street today. I was telling Jen that I took my class up to the Fletcher Street Riding Club today to do some photographs. So we're going to do a project. That'll be their final project. But Fletcher Street was who the movie Concrete Cowboy was sort of patterned after with Idris Elba a few years ago. So, but they have a very robust riding club up there, and they've formed a nonprofit. So they're looking for donations if anybody's interested, but they're very in tune to what that community needs, and especially focused on the children. You know, they do a lot of children's programming. During COVID, they have chickens, so they were delivering chicken eggs by horseback during COVID to some of the neighbors up there. So they're
Wow.
really active.
Interesting. So, what makes a cowboy? I think of cowboys as being out there on the range, driving the cattle. I don't think of them as being in the city.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference between what we are accustomed to think of as cowboys, which is pretty much sort of a Hollywood um, invention in a way. You know, I mean, I grew up with Gunsmoke and all those movies, and the big westerns and things like that that were largely white. You know, they were large. You know the black cowboy was kind of written out of that part of our history, and the black cowboy's always been around. It's always been part of that history. It just wasn't shown that much. So, um, yeah, you do have those cowboys out on the big plains and doing the big Western sort of things with the herds and stuff that you see on, the Pioneer Woman on Food Network and things like that. Though they really do exist. But I think in the cities, the way that the black cowboys sort of had developed in these urban areas were was that they came up from the South. A lot of them during the Great Migration, they came up from the South, and they had this Western culture behind them that they didn't leave in the South. They brought all that with them. Um, in fact, today I was talking with L Dog, who is Ellis Farrell, who's the founder of the Fletcher Street Writing Club, and he was telling me how he grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, and when he moved to Philadelphia, when he came to Philadelphia, he missed being around horses, so he established the Fletcher Street Writing Club, and that's the way it got started. But and there's all kinds of stories like that where people came up from the South, and um, they brought that culture with them. You know,
So fabulous.
yeah.
Well, let's take a look at a couple more pictures. And then we've got some questions coming into the Q&A. We're starting off hot, so that's great. I want to get to a couple more pictures.
Mm,
There we
yeah,
go.
yeah, Molly. So when I started the story, just a little snippet about how I got started on the story. I had just done a project in North Philadelphia where I was photographing drugs. It was like a year and a half project photographing drugs in North Philadelphia, and I had gotten so, I think, burned on that story in terms of it was a really hard story to do, and I got into the cowboy story because I wanted something that would be a little bit more uplifting, that I thought wouldn't be a hard lift to photograph. Especially, I wanted to do it in color. I didn't want to do it in black and white. And so I did the story, and when the story ran in the Sunny magazine, we got more letters and mail, and this is snail mail, not email, from our readers that said they didn't realize that there was such a thing as black cowboys. And so I took that mail to my editors and said, "Hey, look at all this. Can we do something maybe for Black History Month coming up?" And the magazine story ran in October, and so they gave me rein to go out and find some stories across the country. That story ran as a five-part series in the daily paper, and the National Geographic saw that and asked me to shoot it for them. That story ran on their website for 10 years. So there was just an overwhelming response from this story that I thought would probably be this little short, 1 month story that's lasted 30 years now. But I say all that to say that, getting back to Molly, when I was working on the story, my research was basically just gumshoe reporting. I was just following leads. Somebody told me about Molly Stevenson in south of Houston, who's uh, inherited the largest black ranch in Houston. whose mother had the largest black ranch in Houston. And so I contacted Molly, asked her if I could come down, and she said, she invited me down, and I came down, made some pictures, and I made this picture of her feeding her baby goat in front of their ranch house. And she said, "No, by the way, I'm getting married in a few days." And I'm like, "Great." So I stayed around for the wedding, photographed the wedding. It was amazing, you know. And Molly and I have sort of been in and out of touch ever since then. I went down a couple of years ago and photographed her and her husband on their ranch. So that's a little side story to Molly.
It's lovely. This is a sweet picture. And I love that you did it in color because as much as I love black and white, I think that a lot of times that's a way of getting to an emotion or a clarity. But I think, the complexity of the color, it just, I don't know, somehow it grounds it. There's something about the color. I think that was, I can't, I can't express it, but I think it was a really nice choice.
Yeah, I mean these photographs, I can't imagine them in black and white. I did do a little project in black and white, but those were mainly portraits. But yeah, I'm glad that I decided to do all these in color. And this is all color film, by the way. This isn't
Yeah,
digital. So this is all
digital.
Kodachrome, actually, Kodachrome 200 for the most part.
I think black and white might be distancing for this.
Yeah, and I think black and white would make it more. It would give it more that journalistic feel.
Right.
And you know, my thought back then and my thought still is that I'm glad I chose color because the drug story I think really needed to be in black and white because it was a very gritty, hard story. I think color would have gotten in the way, but I think color sort of bathes these photos with um, some of them with even a sense of compassion, like this one, with the warm glow of the light and everything. It just sort of adds more visual information to the photograph.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's get to those questions. Thank you all for your patience and for sending them in. Jen's gonna read them out to us.
Okay. First of all, several people commenting, thank you, coming, Ron, and thank you for coming back, Art Talk. Mary Flamer asked, I'm curious about what you see as the differences and similarities of youth in Oklahoma and East Coast cities. Working with horses, I would think, provides youth with a lot of responsible behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. I mean, this is a great question to ask now after just coming from Fletcher Street just literally a few hours ago. Um, the kids that were up there, so Philadelphia's on spring break, and there were a lot of kids up there. And these kids sort of growing up around in that environment, I think really reminds me of the environment I grew up in. I mean, just their love of animals, their sense of duty for what they have to do to take care of the horses, to muck the stalls and do all that kind of stuff. Um, I think it's kind of a lost it's a lost gift that a lot of our kids don't get now, to be grow up around animals. I mean, big animals. I know a lot of kids have dogs and cats and things, but to grow up around farm animals is a whole different thing. Um, Now, I say this as if I really enjoyed it. So I tell people, for one thing, I am not a cowboy. I have never been a cowboy. I'm a photographer who photographs cowboys. I came to Philadelphia because one of the things I realized is that I don't have to wake up in the morning and there's something wanting to be fed, which, I am
Mm.
happy to oblige. But just being around these kids, and when I say these are little kids, I mean, these are like maybe, I don't know, little girl may have been like 8 or 9, something like that. But just to not have that fear of horses, just to just know what they need to do. I think there's not much different in a child that experiences that no matter what side of the country you're on. Now, I have no idea what it's like to grow up in North Philadelphia. I didn't have that experience. I didn't have that urban experience. I mean, the town that I grew up in was 900 people. So, there were more chickens and horses and cattle than there were people in the town. So that was my experience growing up. Um, I think there's a big difference between kids that grow up in the city and they grow up in the small rural towns. I think there's a huge difference. Um, and I wouldn't even begin to know what that experience would be. But just looking from what I saw today and how these kids reacted to the animals and just being in that space where there's just mud and cow manure everywhere and and just not even flinching. uh there's not much difference there.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Someone has asked, could there be a major Hollywood type movie on these cowboys? And I think we answered that was Concrete Cowboy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
on Netflix. I'll stick the information
Mhm.
in the chat for everyone.
Oh yeah, that's actually based on, like I said, the Fletcher Street
Mhm.
Cowboys. And I'll throw this out too. I just got a grant. I was just notified a few days ago that I got a grant to do. I had pitched a proposal to the Cooper Foundation at Swarthmore to do a story on celebrating Western Black heritage through song and art. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring in Don Flemons, who is one of the founders of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, along with Rihanna Giddens. Well, Rihanna's not coming, but Don's coming. He has an album called Black Cowboy. So we're going to bring him in for a performance. We're going to bring in Charles Perry, who is doing a documentary film on Black Cowboys. It'll be out next year. All this is going to happen. Excuse me. All this is going to happen in October of 26. We're going to bring in Mia Meeks, who is a professor at Vassar, who wrote a book about Black films, analyzing Black films. We're going to do take people to a Black rodeo at the Leah Chorus Center that's produced by a man named Ivan McClellan, who did a book called 8 Seconds, uh, and runs the rodeo called 8 Seconds. So all this is going to happen in 2026. So it's going to be a big celebration, maybe a week or so long celebration of this Black Western heritage.
Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations on
Thanks.
that. That we're looking forward to that. You'll have to let us know about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I think we've got another question, Jen, and then we'll go back to the photos.
We do, and this actually ties in very nicely. Where were Black cowboys working historically,
Mhm.
and how many were there?
Well, the sort of the number, I don't know the specific number, but the percentage is that nearly a quarter of all cowboys working in the at the turn of the century were Black. Um, so there were a large number of working cowboys, and that name cowboy has been arguably um, sort of determined by some historians as a sort of almost a slang, a, a, a slight towards the Black and brown people who worked the ranches back then. Um, but yeah, it was a dirty, nasty job, and a lot of these folks were coming out of the South. They needed work, and they were getting jobs. They were working along the some of the trails that came up from Texas. The Chisholm trails and those major trails that followed the train lines. My grandfather herded cattle in the 30s and 40s from my town Fort Gibson to Catoosa, just south of Tulsa, Oklahoma, about a 40-mile one-way trip. So that's what he did. He herded cattle, and he also did rodeo performances. He was a calf roper. So yeah, so there's a long history of black cowboys, people working the ranches and things like that. And actually, in the book, Art Burton, who wrote uh, the historical part of the book, there's not a lot of history in there, but Art packs a lot of information into his essay about this in the book.
Jen, I want to follow up on that, but I think we often jump around on the slides, Ron. I'd love to see 18, 19, 20, Jen, with sort of these working cowboys while we follow up on that.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting, as you say, Black cowboys have been written out of the record so much so that we don't realize they were any, to the point of when Beyonce came out with her What Country Western album,
Hmm.
there was a reaction among some people that she didn't have the right. This Texas woman did not have the right to, write that music, perform that
Yeah.
music.
Right. I mean, Beyonce grew up in Houston, so I think she knew Molly. I heard somewhere that she knew Molly, or maybe Molly knew her or something. So she was, just a little girl running around in Houston like everybody else, with the cow. So if anybody has a right to write music about that, and from a lived experience, it would be Beyonce.
Yeah.
I think, there's so much going on around now about trying to cancel people and make their stories not relevant. I mean, Beyonce's story is relevant. It's a wonderful record. She pays homage to people that were kind of forgotten in the music business, especially black people that were forgotten in the music business. So I think it's a really important record, that, what she did. So,
All right. Well, good. Thank you for that, Ron.
yeah.
Let's take a look at these pictures. Clown Rescue.
Hmm. Yeah, so this is it was sort of a little mini, I guess, documentary I did on this guy. His name was Leon Coffey. He was one of the best rodeo clowns in the around. This was at a rodeo. I think this was in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, I believe, either that or Oakland. But anyway, it was at it may have been Okmulgee. I think it was Okmulgee. Okmulgee has one of the largest, actually has the largest black rodeo around. I mean, in August they get about 30,000 people over 3 days to come to that rodeo. But anyway, so I was doing this story on him just to show how dangerous it is to be a rodeo clown. I mean, you see these guys and they're all dressed up, like a clown, and they're doing silly things, but they really serve to protect the riders when they get in trouble. And I don't know if these pictures are any kind of sequence or order, but there are like two other pictures that follow after this, where yeah, this is the guy. So this person got hung up in the bull rigging. He couldn't get his hand loose, and you can see the hand, Leon's hand coming off on the right side there to rescue him.
Did he make it? Ooh,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what's the next slide. Is
that's
that?
scary.
Yeah, no. So there's another slide where you see him really just sort of drape his body over the rider's body to protect him from the bull. So it was a pretty intense situation. This was in Oakland, actually. And if you see bull riders nowadays, they're basically wearing body armor. They're wearing helmets and bodysuits, full bodysuits, and things like that. These guys were just the only safety equipment they had on was a cowboy hat, and they would go out and strap themselves to these, 2,000-pound beast, and the bull is, throwing them all every which way. And um, Ivan named his rodeo in his book after, he called it 8 seconds because that's how long you have to stay on the rodeo to score points. And it's all about style and how you manage to, kick your heels and throw your hands up and hold on with one hand.
That's amazing. And then I'm just saying, number 13, Dallas. This is an incredible action shot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This was at so this was at a ranch in south of Dallas. And I'm blanking on the name of the family that had this ranch. But anyway, um, these ranches, they would have sort of makeshift rodeo arenas in their on their property. And on Sundays, they would get together and sort of pass the hat. People would put money in the hat, and then they would have roping competitions and things. So that's what was going on here. This was at they call this the arena there. They called it the Hog Pen, and so they were just doing like this was the fun little Sunday thing to do.
That's incredible. I mean, so can you tell us a little bit about capturing this photograph? Because I'm a little bit worried about you, Ron.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, luckily I had a long lens. I had a pretty long lens, a telephoto lens to make this shot. But I mean, that's the thing about photographing rodeos and being in the arena. I was just telling somebody this not too long ago that my very first time I shot a rodeo, um, I was wearing cowboy boots, and I looked around and all the other photographers were wearing football cleats. And when the bull came towards us, everybody got out of the way, and I was kind of like one of those cartoon characters where my feet were just spinning around in circles. So after that, I realized, okay, style is not the thing here; safety's the thing. So you have to, it's. I mean, photographing rodeos, they're really fun to do. I've done some photo workshops um, down in at Cowtown in Jersey. Um, and I think it is a little intimidating to get down and sort of put yourself in a position. But if you put yourself in a position where you're not going to get run over, and you pay attention, especially when the bulls are loose and the broncs are loose, because you never know which way they're going. And just it's just one of those things where you just have to be aware of what your surroundings.
Amazing capture there, and the
Thanks.
intensity on that young man's face, uh, the way the mane on that horse is, their hooves, it's an incredible photograph.
Thanks. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just one of those things where, sometimes everything kind of comes together. The light was really nice on it, and all these photographs work, at least the ones in the exhibition in the book, work because of the light. It's just being attentive to where the light is and trying to put yourself in a position to accentuate that.
Wow. So we've got some questions, comments, Jen?
Sorry, booming around some windows on my computer, try to get everything. So Edward wanted to know, Ron, how did your interest in photography develop, and how has your perspective changed over time?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Yeah. So I have to say my interest in photography was sparked by my father, who was a photographer. Well, he did a lot of things, but one of the things, he had a small photo business in the town I grew up in, and he documented um, inadvertently, I would say. I don't think he did it intentionally, but I inherited all of his negas and everything. He documented this sort of the black side of town of Fort Gibson. So I have some really nice images of his, and actually I've been doing some other projects with his work around that. But he took me into his darkroom one time when I was maybe 8 or 9 or so. I was pretty young, and he said, "So I'm going to put this paper in this water, and you're going to see a ghost come up." And naturally, he was talking about the paper, photographic paper and developer. And I was expecting to see Casper come drifting up out of the water. But when I saw that print develop, yeah, it gave me chills. And I don't think those chills ever left. I've just been enamored with the idea of what photography can do since then. And and also the process of it, how I'm really fascinated with all the experimentation you can do with photography. I'm kind of a makeshift scientist in a way that I don't have the degree or anything, but I love the idea of what science is all about. I love the social implications of photography. When I got into photojournalism, I wanted to kind of save the world with my photography when I was a young photojournalist. So I did a lot of stories sort of in a sort of a social justice spirit, but also, oh, that's my cat in the background. He does that. um, so I've always been interested in all the different ways that you can think about photography, how photography functions, the science of it, the experimentation of it, the process, all those things. It just really is always, even how you make photographs without a camera, you know, um, pinhole cameras and making photographs with a scanner, how far can you push things? I was just telling a young man the other day, he said he was shooting Kodak Gold film, but he want, and I was telling him how it looks nice if you when it's aged. That's one really great thing about that film that we all grew up with. And he said, well, how can I make that happen? I said, I don't know, put it in the oven, see what happens. I have no idea what's going to happen. And once I told him, I said, well, wait a minute now, don't put it in the oven and walk away. I said, just put it in the oven for put your negatives in the oven for a couple of minutes and see what happens. But I think that's the thing, it's really fun to just sort of play, and just be curious about what could happen. So.
Jen, let's pull up, what did I say, number 17?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's fabulous.
This is at the White House stables. They were getting ready to go on a ride, I think through town, and this is in Philly. And so this young lady was, adjusting her earrings, which I thought was really kind of,
We're all human. We're all the
yeah,
same.
you got to look good when you're on that horse,
That's right.
Yeah. And I walked up and I started taking pictures. I don't even think she even noticed me. I just started
That's a great
snapping away.
picture.
Yeah.
So do you need a model release, or is it just it's out there so it's fair game?
You know, I did not get model releases on any of these folks. And the implication is when you make photographs for the newspaper, it's sort of an applied consent that they know that I'm making newspaper pictures for the newspaper. So I did not get model releases. Although here lately I've started asking people for model releases because I knew they would be in the book. But I would say in fact, just about the vast majority of the books, images in the books, I didn't have model releases.
All right. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Next up, Jen. Yep. 22. Okay. She's working on that. And so tell us about this book. You've been on a book tour. The book
Hmm.
sold out immediately,
Hmm. Yeah.
basically.
I have what it looks like here. So this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Jen, can you pull up that photograph while he's talking about the book? It's a stunning photograph. It's beautiful. It's like poetry. Okay, we'll go through them all.
Yeah.
Go
That's
ahead,
about,
Ron.
yeah.
We're
Well,
having some technical
I'll
difficulties.
put it up again. You can see
Sorry
it
about
there.
that,
Sorry
Jen.
about that. I thought I didn't realize I was sharing. I'll get it up for you.
Yeah, that's it.
It
But
happens.
no, I tried to publish this book a few times. I tried to publish it I think probably soon after I got done with the story for Geographic and those stories. And I thought, oh, everybody's going to want to have this since I got such a great feedback from it. But when I took it to New York and nobody wanted it. Nobody said, well, I haven't had one editor tell me there were no such things as black cowboys. And I said, well, I have about 20,000 slides that say there are. So there is.
Right.
So anyway, so I just let it drop. And then after when COVID came along, and I had done another book with it with a colleague at the Philadelphia Daily News on Black veterans, and that book did really well. And I thought, well, I'll give it another shot. I'll see if I can get some people in New York interested in it. And still, it just heard crickets. And so in COVID, I actually I got a Guggenheim grant uh, from the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation um, that allowed me to produce this book. And I just thought, well, I have the money now. I'm just going to do it myself because I can't get anybody else interested in it. It was just sort of this albatross that had been around my neck for so long. I said, I just want to get it done. And I figured I'd just produce, 1,500 books and nobody sells out books. Well, when the book sold out in a month, it shocked us all. I mean, we had no idea. The publisher had never sold a book out before. Um, it was literally we didn't know what to do, and it was coming up. This was last September when the book was released. It was coming up on Christmas. We wanted books for Christmas, so we scrambled. We produced 3,700 more books, and so we've been going through those. So the book just keeps chugging along, and we don't know. I don't know where it's. I don't know what the end is going to be for it, but it has an exhibition that's attached to it now, and that exhibition has been to it's at its fourth location now in Arkansas. It's going to go to Missouri, and then it'll land at the Philadelphia Print Center in 2026, in the fall of 26. And then after that, Exhibitions USA, that travels exhibitions nationwide, is going to pick it up, and they'll travel it for another 5 years. So it's going to have a long life and journey, which is amazing, to think that it.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. Tell us about this photo, Ron. I just think this is so beautiful.
Yeah. So I was on a trail ride in Texas, and this young man he was on the trail ride, and he just had the most beautiful face. I mean, when you're a photographer, you just sometimes people come into your lens and you just can't, the lens just loves them. And I photographed this kid just over and over and over again. He was just amazing. Um, and I shot this on the trail ride. This was during the National Geographic part of the shoot. And the way that worked is I would shoot the film, and then I would send it in, and I wouldn't see it for 2 weeks until I went back for an edit. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, I didn't even remember shooting this picture. And it became the cover of the book because after looking at these pictures for so long, I had just lost all objectivity. I had no idea what was a good picture anymore. They'd been around for so long that I just didn't know. And when it came time to pick a cover for the book, everybody wanted this picture. I wanted another picture, actually. I wanted a picture of sort of this. It was this man who looked like a big rough and tumble sort of cowboy. But everybody wanted this picture, and I was like, okay, well, let's go with this. And in hindsight now, I think this is probably the best picture for it because it's so atypical of that idea of what a cowboy is. And I think it shows sort of the tenderness that I wanted to have in the book. And, I wanted the book to be just more of a love letter to the culture and not be this historical or preachy or trying to make a point. I just wanted you to flip through the images, flip through the book, and just see pictures about this lifestyle and not any sort of narrative structure. And I think this picture sort of captures the essence of what the book's about.
I mean, I have to say tenderness is the word that comes to my mind too. I mean, there's just such a beauty and elegance to this photograph.
Hmm.
I really appreciate that. We're coming close to it, so we've got a little bit more that I really want to fit in. I've got to look at picture number 17. I love this picture. We'll give Jen, it's hard for, Jen's got to go back and forth with all the
Yeah.
questions and the photos, so we really appreciate it, Jen.
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job. This was at Strawberry Mansion, like its title says there. So this was during the in Philadelphia, and I had been at the stables. This man, his name's Bob Hill. I'd been at the stables with him, and he was getting ready to go for a ride in Fairmount Park, and I said, "Can I tag along?" He said, "Yeah." You know, so I'm sort of driving my car. I wasn't on a horseback at that time. I was driving my car, and I saw that he was headed towards this mural of Malcolm X at Strawberry Mansion, and so I just sat there and waited and hoped that he would ride by. You know, I didn't direct him to do this; he just did it, and it just everything just sort of came together. You know, the light was there, everything was there. In fact, I thought it was going to be a little bit overexposed because the way the sunlight was working on the mural, but it just happened to work out really well. So that's what it was. I call this picture legends actually in the exhibition because of the sort of the iconic nature of the and juxtaposition between the mural and Mr. Hill.
Yeah, it's almost like they're in dialogue with each other.
Yeah,
They're facing each other.
yeah.
It's really great. And also before we go back to the questions, I really want to fit in 22, please, Jen. I like this one because again, it's the juxtaposition of cultural elements. I
hmm
think it's fascinating.
hmm Yeah, you know, again, the wonderful thing about photography is, you know, things sometimes the universe just gives you a gives you a favor, you know, and the light was really beautiful in this image. These young boys had just washed this horse. They were letting it dry in the sun, and a basketball was there. So they picked up the basketball and they started playing basketball. And I saw all this stuff coming together. I had no idea what the picture would be, but when the shadow started falling on the wall and everything, it was just one of those things that everything just kind of came together, you know. And I
Yeah.
just stood back and just snapped. I didn't direct or do anything, you know. They just did everything for me.
That's wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
so we do have some questions. Appreciate everybody's patience. And back to you, Jen.
I just have to say that that one is on display at the Mitchner right now, and I just stare at it all the time because I can't figure out if the boy's foot is actually touching the wall and his shadow is just it. There's so much to explore.
I've been trying to
Yeah.
figure that out myself, actually. I can't figure out where some of those shadows come from. Honestly.
Right? It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
It's so how it looks like he's, yeah, it's just you captured a magical moment right
Yeah.
there. So, okay. So we have a couple questions. Back, someone commented the soil dusted up is terrific on the one that you caught with the boy roping.
hmm
So I wanted to share that with you. Alice Lawler asked, the Philadelphia Youth Program with horses that you mentioned, is it a nonprofit and what is its name? And what is the name of the organization in New York that you mentioned that's seeking donations?
hmm So I can't really speak to the New York um, group. I think they're online. If you Google New York uh, urban riders or New York Black Cowboys, I'm sure they'll pop up. But in Philadelphia, the group is called the Fletcher Street Riding Club, and they are in North Philadelphia on North 26th Street. They're a nonprofit, and they do take donations. They have a really thriving youth program where they teach kids equestrian care, teach kids how to ride. They take kids on trips. The person that started that is Ellis Farrell. They call him L Dog. So he's 86. He started that program up there, years and years and years ago. They got some land donated to them where the stables are. So it's called the Fletcher Street Riding Club. They're online, they're on Instagram, you can Google them on, they have a website, really nice website. There's been videos made about them. They're pretty popular in this, so.
I'll
Okay,
make
great.
sure to include that information in the email that I send out
Hmm.
tomorrow or whenever we have the link up.
Yeah.
So we have another question. Have you engaged in digital photography at all? And has it enabled any liberation or curtailed you in any way?
Oh yeah, digital. Yeah, I do digital photography, I mean, I do I mean, it's hard not to do digital photography now. Um, my love is still film. I don't think I'll ever lose my love for film. Um, I did a project a few years ago on 4x5 images, using a 4x5 camera on film. Now, luckily, I had a student process all that stuff, so I didn't have to do that. That's the one thing I don't miss about film is processing. But I love shooting with, I love shooting with a film camera. But yeah, I do digital. I did I think, people are. I get this question all the time. Well, what kind of camera did you use? What kind of lens did you use? And I don't know. I really honestly don't know. I don't know. Like for this cowboy thing, I don't know. I can't remember what camera I use. I know I've always been a Nikon person. I know that, but in terms of the model number, I don't remember what model number I used. Yesterday, I gave a talk at the Pennington School in New Jersey, and there was a young man there, and he was just badgering me with questions, which is great. I love that. But he was saying, what's your favorite lens? And I'm like, well, the lens that works. I mean, how do you ask a golfer what's your favorite club? It's the club that you need for the shot. That's I don't have a favorite anything. It's just, my my favorite camera right now is my phone. I've probably made more images with my phone than I have with anything here lately. So, um, you know, it
That's
makes,
encouraging.
yeah.
Jen?
I just have to share this image again. One of the Michener docents, Karen Liebman, said she just gave a tour yesterday of the Michener with 9 to 10-year-olds, and one student loved the shadows in this
Oh,
photo.
great. Great.
You're reaching a younger audience there too.
Yeah, that's good. I love that.
We
I
all
love
want that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Edward said he loves the line, "People come into your lens." And then someone asked, how did you find a publisher for your book?
Well, I found a book packager. Her name is Joanna Hurley, and she was probably one of the first people, one of the only people that really showed an interest in this work. To be honest, I mean, as far as the book goes, she was in Santa Fe, um, and so I contacted her, and she contacted George Thompson Publishing, who does independent. He's an independent publisher, and he was excited about the idea, and so that's how I found the publisher. It was through Joanna. Now, like I said, I had to pay to have this book published, but what George did, he's one of the few independent publishers that actually shares royalties. So, and he has a very good distributor, which is also really a good thing to have, when you do a book, because you don't want to do a book and then just have it sit there. So he was able to distribute it out, and I had an amazing publicist at school, Kara Anderson, who got the word out and got me interviews with, Beyonce's reporter at USA Today, which really pushed the book up to #1 on Amazon. and some other TV interviews and things like that. So she, so it's a combination of all those things. But the publisher was George Thompson Publishing, who does really wonderful books about American places.
I think we've got one more comment, Jen. Is that right?
Yes. Do you have a favorite photo, or is it hard to choose between your children?
Between my, I'll show you a picture of my granddaughter. As far as the Cowboys images go, I mean, I get this all the time too. I don't really have a favorite photo. I think maybe what I'm being told should be my favorite photo is the basketball game photo. That's the one that everybody seems to. I get more comments on that photograph than anyone, and the book cover, and the Malcolm X photo. So those, I think those three are probably the ones that sort of rise to the top in terms of favorites.
Those are interesting. Those are interesting. I kind of like this next one coming up, but we're coming to the end here. And
Oh yeah,
I love contrast, so I love this picture.
yeah. I mean, it's just okay. This guy is like doing roping tricks in the middle of the street in New York. That's all I gotta say. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And he was just doing this thing where he just was, and I think he was in his 70s or I don't know if he was in his 80s or not. But it's just all these amazing roping tricks, literally in Harlem in New York. It's just you can't ask for better. So.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I'm gonna squeeze in one more because I hate to leave people with questions unanswered. And Jen, can you get us Barry Good's question?
Sure. He said, these are more documentary style photography. Is there much, if any, leeway as to processing them?
As to processing them in terms of leeway, and I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at in terms of leeway. I mean, so if we're just talking about processing, so this is all Kodachrome film that doesn't exist anymore, and the process was proprietary towards Kodak had a embargo on that process, so nobody could process that film. And Steve McCurry, I think, who's a Magnum photographer, shot the last Kodachrome film a few years ago, the last roll. So, the processing part of it was pretty standard. You'd send it in and they would process it and send it back to you in slide form. As far as the documentary style goes, yeah, I mean, I think I shot them in a documentary style. The whole project was done in a narrative fashion. I was shooting stories when I shot these, but in the book, they're not laid out in a story fashion. They're laid out as individual images, and the person that did the book design, David Skulkin, is just a master at doing that. And we sit down, we work together, and we play with different layouts. I also have to give a shout out to Elizabeth Chris Chang, who helped me edit the images. She was a photo editor at Geographic who retired, and she was a friend of mine. And I said, "Would you help me edit this book?" And so we just sit down during COVID and did it all over the computer. She was in New York, I was here, and just edited through everything. Got it 20,000 slides edited down to 150 for the book. And then David did a masterful job at laying it out and thinking about design and how the colors worked and just the structure of the book. So,
and I encourage you all to go to Ron Tarver's website because there you have fine art photography as well as your photojournalism photography, and it's really a pleasure to look through all the work. Ron Tarver, thank you so much for joining us on Art Talk. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Ever. This was really fun. It's really fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks to all of you in the audience. Join us next month. We're working on a great guest for you. Jen McHugh is our technical director.
Good night, everybody.
And I'm Laura Womack. Thanks again. Good night.